Welcome into Edge of Philly Sports for a very special interview with Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation, co-founder of BGN Radio, captain of the whole ship. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for Eagles season to finally almost be here. We're through training camp. We're through the preseason games. I'm ready for the real thing.
And if you're an Eagles fan, if you don't know who Brandon is, you're living under a rock. But if you don't, go follow him at Brandon Gowton. Check out bleedinggreennation.com. They have articles, podcast shows. My favorite is him and Jimmy Kempski. But I love during Eagles season setting Brandon to be notifications on what's it called? X now, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, notifications. Because through the whole training camp and the whole season, you get live tweets from him. And it's very insightful and funny at times, and it feels just like a fan. So thank you for that, Brandon. Go check him out. I will kick this off. We have the final 53 that's complete technically, but it's incomplete. So I'll just go down the positions quickly, and I'll start with the quarterback spot. So the Eagles keep 3, Hurts, Mariota, Tanner McKee. What were your thoughts on him in the preseason? It was kind of a guy we didn't know would make the team. Then towards the end, it looked like he might be number 2.
Yeah, Tanner McKee, I remember watching his highlights from Stanford right after day 3 of the NFL draft, that Sunday after the draft is over. So I'm like, all right, what do I expect out of this guy? And I was pleasantly surprised that I saw him like, okay, I feel like this guy can actually play a little bit. I was expecting to see Clayton Thorson, Carson Strong. I was like, no, this guy can actually play a little bit. And then reading more into him, I mean, this is a guy who was like, I think 93rd overall on Pro Football Focus's big board, their top 250. Like, this is a guy that people liked and also thought he was kind of held back by a really bad receiving core and support system there at Stanford. And, it's hard to know what to fully make of that until you actually see him go out in the preseason games. Because even in training camp practices, it's not that he looked bad, but he wasn't really pushing the ball down the field at all. It was a lot of checkdowns. Again, I'm not trying to kill him but he really started to just, let it rip. And, these back shoulder throws. I mean, he looked more advanced than your typical rookie did. And look, I still think Marcus Mariota, for as much as he struggled, should still be the first guy up if something happens to Jalen Hurts. But I would say that leash shouldn't be long with what Tanner McKee did. I think McKee has made his case to be that guy if Mariota struggles.
Yeah, McKee sacked 40 times in his final year at Stanford. It's amazing what a guy can do with some time behind an offensive line. Moving to running backs, Eagles keep 4. I thought it could have maybe went 3. Some thought Trey Sermon would make this team. Any surprises out of this group?
The real question here isn't like who was making the team. I didn't think Trey Sermon was going to make it. He didn't do enough. They might be able to get him back on the practice squad. We'll see what happens with him. There's an injury in there as well. We'll see what goes on with him. But the real question is, how are the touches going to be split up? And I think anyone's lying if they tell you they know exactly how it's going to play out over the course of the season. Everyone can say, oh, it's going to be DeAndre Swift early on or Kenneth Gainwell early on. But I really think this thing is going to depend on matchups. And I really think it's going to depend on who's playing well. I mean, if someone's struggling, I don't think the Eagles are going to have a long leash with any of these guys. And flipping it around the other way, if someone's really going to rise to the occasion, like let's just say, for example, Rashaad Penny, who doesn't really seem to be much in the conversation right now, if he just takes off at some point, I mean, I feel like you have to ride the hot hand. I don't think you're just going to go away from him. So I really think it's a fluid situation that's going to evolve through the course of the year.
Yeah, we do know one thing, though. Boston Scott will play against the New York Giants. The Giants.
That is
true. Well, maybe not. You never know. But moving to the wide receivers, they only keep 4. Britton Covey was cut but picked up on the practice squad today. Did you expect 4, maybe 5? Did anyone else have a chance there besides Covey, do you think?
I thought Covey was going to make it. I had him on my final 53. Wasn't a lock to me. He's on the bubble, but I thought that, look, you need a punt returner. I don't want this to be, and I think the Eagles shouldn't want it to be like it was in 2007 early on when they were like, oh, we don't need a punt returner. Let's get Greg Lewis or J.R. Reed to do it. And they lost the game because of that. So
what a mess.
Now, at the same time, the Eagles did this with Britton Covey last year. They cut him. No one picked him up. and they promoted him from the practice squad the first couple of weeks of the season. They can do that twice. So kind of buys them some time to figure out what they want to do there. I think that's what they're going to do again. They're just going to elevate him for those couple of games and then see how injuries shake out. I'm sure they can have other guys like Greg Ward or Olamide Zaccheaus take those reps in practice as well, punt returning. So they still have time to kind of figure that out. But for now, I think it's going to be Covey, being elevated from the practice squad for that fifth receiver / punt returner role.
Yeah, I noticed during the preseason they were trying out a ton of different guys. The one game, I think 5 different people returned the one preseason game. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, I agree with you. He'd probably do the same thing in the beginning there. This was definitely a shocker to me. Not only the trade, but now the Eagles now have 4 tight ends: Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, who I thought might get cut this year. But they make a trade for Albert. You pronounce it for me. You got it down yet?
I'm still working on it. Albert O, as we all call him.
Albert O. All right, we'll go Albert O. Know anything about this guy?
I mean, this is a guy that I feel like I've definitely seen, like in either fantasy football or, these football Twitter kind of communities, people, this guy like that people are maybe irrationally high on relative to what he actually has done on the field. And you get it from the standpoint of, 6'5", he's like 250 or so. And he runs like a 4.49. I mean, this is pretty crazy. This is a very rare combination of size and speed, and he's flashed at times. He had that big catch against the Eagles back in 2021 when the Eagles played the Broncos. So there's potential here. At the same time, there's a reason that the Broncos are basically giving him up almost for free, not quite. Eagles give up a 6th, or they give up a 6th, so they get a 7th and Albert O back. So look, the Eagles only kept the 4 receivers, as we mentioned, and they run 12 personnel, 13 personnel, so it really doesn't hurt to go heavy at tight end with 4 guys there. And this is a guy who has some upside. I don't really think Grant Calcaterra did a lot of great things in training camp. I thought he kind of underwhelmed relative to expectations. In fairness to him, he was working with a backup quarterback who couldn't always get him the ball, so that's not all his fault. But I definitely think this signals that they don't necessarily love what they saw out of Grant Calcaterra and kind of want to push him a little bit.
Yeah, the few Broncos fans I do know weren't happy with the trade, especially all they got back was a 6th rounder. So the Eagles, low risk, high reward type of thing. Moving on to the O-line, the Eagles keep 9: Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. Fred Johnson makes the team. Sua Opeta. Did you expect 9? The one concern here is the backup center position to me. I don't know if Josh Anderson would ever come back or will make the practice squad. What any concerns here with the O-line?
Yeah, I think most people, at least from the the beat writer predictions, had the Eagles keeping this 9. I don't think that, and there's no surprise on who made the team, who didn't. It's more about there's still questions who exactly is going to play what role, like you just mentioned there. I mean, if Jason Kelce goes down during a game, you're thinking, I guess, that Cam Jurgens moves over to center, but then you're also having to change 2 offensive line spots at that point, and put in Tyler Steen at right guard. Fred Johnson has guard tackle experience. He might be the backup left tackle right now. I thought Steen also looked good there, maybe even better at tackle, where he played at Alabama most recently than he did at guard. So he could be in the mix there. Is Jack Driscoll definitely your right tackle behind Lane Johnson? Do you like Fred Johnson more than him? There's a lot of questions still, I think, in that regard. There's still things we have to figure out. But I do think that for any kind of concern that you could have about the Eagles offensive line, which I don't think people should really have, I mean, the fact that they're locked in with the starters, that's much more than you can say for some teams that are still trying to figure out who they want starting for them. So they're in a good spot there. We'll see how the depth shakes out.
Cool. Is the only one on the roster now, Cam Jurgens, is the only one that can actually play center?
I mean, I think you could put Dickerson there. He hasn't done it for a while, but if you had to.
Oh, yeah, he did play there. You're right. I forgot about that.
But that would have to you're basically saying that takes Kelce and Jurgens getting hurt at that point, which would be a very bad scenario.
Very true. Very true. Defensive tackle, Eagles keep 7. Kentavious Street makes it. Been in this. I didn't realize he's in the league 5 years, had 3.5 sacks last year. Moro Ajomo, he had a nice camp, and at least in the preseason games I saw. Are you surprised they kept 7?
I didn't have them keeping 7. I don't think it's crazy that they did. They were using a 6-man rotation by the end of the season last year. You had Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, and Milton Williams. Like all those guys were playing, so like real snaps. So I'm not shocked with the guys that the Eagles have on this roster and how they really want to rotate at that spot. And Fletcher Cox is another year older, that you want to have a lot of guys behind him who can kind of come in and rotate. So yeah, I'm not shocked that they did it. I know the PhiladelphiaEagles.com's Fran Duffy, who's obviously one of the best in the game when it comes to analysis and evaluations and whatnot. He liked Kentavious Street a lot, what he saw from him. So he certainly had some fans out there, even though it wasn't a super high profile guy. I think if you're going to go heavy at a spot, hard to say in the trenches is a wrong place to go.
Agreed. How awesome. You're the beat writer, so you're there every practice that the media's allowed in. How awesome was it to watch Jalen Carter?
I mean, when I saw him bowl over Joel Bitonio, who is a 2-time first-team All-Pro and 5-time Pro Bowler, I mean, it's just like, it's almost like, did that really happen? Am I mistaken? Did he trip? Like, what happened there? But no, I mean, he just shoved him over. And I think we really saw Jalen Carter come on through the course of training camp. I don't think it was necessarily like a day one domination thing, as much as he just continued to flash and get better as camp went along. And I mean, you look at the praise he's getting from his teammates, and this guy looks like a guy who it's tough to put these expectations on him, because rookie defensive tackles just they're not like double-digit sack guys. They don't, and even if he has a season that's like 4.5 sacks, 5 sacks, I think that's a really, really good rookie season. But man, when you look at what the potential is here, he might actually be the exception. He might be able to get, something like 8 sacks, which would be an incredible rookie season for him.
Yeah, I'm actually a Georgia Bulldog fan, so I watched quite a bit of him, and I'm expecting like Jerome Brown type stuff. Like, wow. This guy is like, I know I don't want to put that on him, like you said.
Yeah, it's hard.
But like watching him there, it was like he was a man amongst boys, and like now seeing this the limited stuff I've been able to see, and then hearing what you guys report, I'm really excited. Moving to
the power is definitely real. I will say that.
Okay. Good. The defensive ends, outside linebackers, also known as edge rushers, they keep 6. No real surprises here except Derek Barnett. I know they really can't cut him because of the cap situation. There were rumors they were trying to trade him because of playing time, or his agent could seek a trade. I'm going to talk about how much of a problem is this guy. Every single fight that was in training camp, he started. Like, he was involved with, or anytime there was a flag, it was him. And you had a couple joking tweets, but everyone did. Like, and then Nick Sirianni seems to love him. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. He's going to do something dumb, or he's going to do multiple dumb things. And who's going to be surprised? No one's going to be surprised. Maybe the Eagles are going to be surprised if they're keeping him. But look, it is fair to say that they're not deep at defensive end specifically. If we're talking about, just 4-3 defensive ends, that's really just like Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and then Derek Barnett. So I get it from that standpoint of that mold of a player. But I mean, the Bears cut Travis Gibson, who, unrelated note, but he was the guy who hurt Jalen Hurts last year. But I think he's probably better than Derek Barnett. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm seriously considering any offers I'm getting for this guy and weighing those heavily. I wouldn't give him up just to give him up for anything. I'm not giving him up for, basically what the Eagles got Albert O for. I wouldn't do that kind of trade. I think you might as well keep him at that point. But if you can get I don't know, a 6th-round pick, 5th round, I don't know, just straight out something like that, I think you have to consider it, because I worry about Derek Barnett being a detriment at some point in a big game. What if it's the biggest game of the year and he makes a dumb mistake? What if it's the super, you know what I mean? Like, so you just can't be trusted, and I don't love to see that. And also, let's even put that aside for a second. Let's say that's overblown, which I don't think it is, but let's say it is. I mean, I don't think he had a good camp, so I just don't know really what he's doing here.
Yeah, the boneheadedness doesn't outweigh the success on the field. So, like, you could live with it if he was making all these plays. Though, if he doesn't recover that fumble in the Super Bowl, we might not have one. So I have to give him that. Inside linebackers, Nakobe Dean, they signed Zach Cunningham through camp. He makes team, probably will start. Christian Ellis had a good camp by all accounts. Are you surprised they cut Morrow?
Not at all. I mean, he started the offseason, started camp as a starting linebacker next to Nakobe Dean. He fell down the depth chart. There's a reason they signed Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack, who, retired halfway through. But he fell out of favor. He's also in the situation where, none of his contract was guaranteed, or very little. And the Eagles can, bring him back after week 1, potentially, if they want to. So his contract would not be guaranteed for this season, the whole vested veteran thing week 1. So, I think a reunion is possible down the road, but he did not look good enough to definitely be on this roster. And, I think Nakobe Dean had a mostly disappointing camp. Not that he looked bad, but just didn't flash as much as you would have hoped. Started to come on a little bit at the end. We'll see if he can continue that going. Zach Cunningham impressed me. I don't think he's going to be a star player, but for a guy who was just signed off the street in the middle of camp, he looked like a credible NFL starter, a guy who could be respectable in there. He has really good length. We saw that manifest in the form of him breaking up some passes. So, look, it's not a strong unit, at least on paper, but I think they just might have enough, assuming health, which is a big assumption, that they can get by with what they have.
And if you're going to keep extra players at other positions, you got to go short somewhere else. And linebacker's probably the spot, especially with this organization. One of those spots was cornerback, which is up next. Eli Ricks makes the team. Excited about that. Mario Goodrich, Mekhi Gardner. I really wanted him to make it. I had that tweet where I kind of said they should cut Ringo, but they won't, type of thing. Took some heat for that, but me being a Georgia fan said that, but Mekhi Gardner makes the practice squad. Talk about Ringo a little bit. He did not look good in the preseason. You did again said he had flashes though in camp where you could see there's a reason to keep this guy and develop him.
Yeah, he had some moments where you're like, oh, that was a really good play. I think one of the plays that specifically stood out, he had a near pick on Jalen Hurts on a route run by DeVonta Smith, front corner of the end zone during red zone drills relatively early in camp. Didn't make the play, but still was like in really good position to jump on that ball and have a chance at it. And I thought that was really impressive for a rookie going up against DeVonta Smith nonetheless. And, there were some other plays too. Look, he turned 21 in June, about 2 months ago. He is extremely young. And by comparison, Eli Ricks and Mekhi Gardner, I think Ricks is going to be 23 this season. Gardner's going to be 24 or so. So, he's a couple years behind. And I think he's in a spot where some of these bottom of the roster guys aren't really going to play much anyway. You have to have so many inactives on game day. I think you kind of go into this knowing he's going to be a long-term project. You have Darius Slay and James Bradbury in place. Josh Jobe had a really good summer. I think he's established himself as the top backup on the outside. You're just going to hope that you don't have to play Keely Ringo this year. But I definitely think that given his young age and his incredibly rare blend of size and athleticism, you take a chance on that and you see if it works out down the road.
Yeah, I totally overreacted, but you're correct. But Josh Jobe, he's in the outside. There's talk of James Bradbury in the slot a lot, playing that slot corner, nickel corner. If do you think that's a legit thing for the bigger tight ends that we're going to be going up against this year?
Yeah, I definitely think that's more of a matchup specific thing than them trying to just get James Bradbury into the slot because they like that against anyone. I definitely think, you could see that against, let's say, Darren Waller. Let's say, CeeDee Lamb, some of these bigger receivers, tight ends. I definitely think that's something that they want to have to be able to do. Not necessarily saying it's something they'll do all the time, as much as Sean Desai seems to be experimenting with that. It also kind of frees up, in theory, if you want to, you could potentially put Avonte Maddox back at safety at that point. So, yeah, I definitely think there is something to that. It wasn't just brought up out of nowhere, but it'll be interesting to see just how much they do it.
Cool. And then safeties, Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Terrell Edmonds, Justin Evans. No real surprise there. Kayvon Wallace made some noise, ends up getting cut, and then picked up by the Cardinals with Gannon over there. I just wanted to ask you about Reed Blankenship. It's very hard for me to – I know it's for real, and I'm excited for him. I like him, but it's crazy that he went from undrafted free agent to basically that pick was set up. He was put in the right position, and he's just evolved into now – he barely played because he was the starter immediately because of how good he's doing.
Going back to last training camp, he's never really looked bad, honestly. He's never, I'm not going to say he's a perfect player. Everyone has their slip ups, even the stars, but on the whole, when you're talking about good versus bad, the good is just so outweighed the bad with him. He's such a smart player. I think he's always in the right position. He's just such a knack in that, whether that's in run support or if that's in coverage. He had several interceptions in training camp because of that. He makes plays on the ball. He's athletic. I think he's smart. I think he's really good. I think people generally are kind of underrating his ceiling. Like I think, I'm not going to say all pro because that's a far gap.
Let's go. I'm on the all pro train.
I mean, maybe one day I'm saying, but right now I don't think you can say that as much as I think this is a guy. I don't think he's gonna be a Pro Bowler this year, but I think he could eventually be develop into a Pro Bowl kind of guy if he continues on the track that he's on. Because I think he's been really impressive. At the very least, I think he's going to be a good above average starter for the Eagles, which is one of two safety positions, and the other one, I don't know. We'll see about that. But to have at least one is certainly a nice start.
Cool. And then finally, I mean, Jake Elliott, Rick Lovato are obvious, but no punter. They cut Zaccheaus, bring him back on the practice squad. Mm-hmm. You and Kelce talked about that a little bit throughout camp, how there weren't one or the other wasn't really showing up the other, and they end up cutting him. And then I know they had a waiver wire for that guy on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh keeps both punters. Do you think there's a punter out there, the punt god? Would you go after him? Because we can't do Zaccheaus again, can we?
It can't be him. It can't be. I mean, he has crapped the bed in each of the Eagles' last two playoff losses. He was really bad in that Bucs game, Sirianni's first year. Wasn't the only reason they lost, but he was really, really bad in that game. He had a 27-yard punt on his first try. He stunk. And he also had punts of 39 or whatever in that game as well. Couple. Braden Mann, the guy you mentioned, the Steelers did cut him. I think he's on waivers, so we'll have to see what happens with that tomorrow, as meaning Thursday, the 31st. We'll see if he becomes available. It sounded like the Eagles put a claim on him earlier this year, but the Steelers got him ahead of them. So we'll see about that one. I think bringing Zaccheaus back is about hopefully just having a placeholder for literally practice right now until they can actually find a new option. But they have to go with a new option. Zaccheaus just is not the answer. You have to find someone else. How could you possibly go into another playoff game and he is terrible again, and then you're surprised? I mean, he's done it the past two times. So you can't do that again. You have to find a new punter.
Agreed. I'm done with Zaccheaus. And I know I took too much of your time, but I have to ask you, you got the Philly stuff on. How exciting are the Philadelphia Phillies right now?
I mean, they lost today, but I don't care. I mean, they look awesome. The bats are alive. I was thinking about once Bryce Harper hit that home run to put the Phillies up, they ultimately blew it. Of course, Craig Kimbrell there at the end. But I was just thinking about how exhausting must it be to be the other team's pitchers and just be like, man, there's no easy outs here. They just keep coming at us. So I think the Phils, and I've been saying this for a while. I've not been worried about them. I think when the real games start, when the postseason lights are on, I think they're going to be ready. And I think they're going to be a hard team to beat once again. Look, it's tough to say they can just definitely go back. It's not that simple. There's a lot of work to be done to get to that stage. But, I mean, them against anyone, I'll take them. I know the Braves are really good. Phillies beat them in the playoffs last year. The Phillies have no reason to be scared of anyone right now. They aren't necessarily they're the best team in baseball. No one can top them. But they have just as good of a chance as anyone else. And I fully believe in them.
Agreed. That 08, 2011 vibes are all over that ballpark too. So it's exciting. Must watch TV then, Phils. Brandon, obviously bleedinggreennation.com. You can find them at Brandon Gowton. Anything new or anything or anywhere else you want to plug for Bleeding Green?
Bleedinggreennation.com, like you mentioned, BGN Radio. I think those are the main ones. We appreciate it.
And I will say, Brandon is the first one, to my knowledge, that identified the downfall of Carson Wentz. I was upset about it at the time, but he was on point and he nailed it. Also, when I met Brandon, he was one of the first people to identify the downfall of Ben Simmons as well.
That's true.
Follow Brandon if you want your sports knowledge up the level. Brandon, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Two of the few things I got right. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That's it, everyone. That was Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. Please like and smash that subscribe button for Edge of Philly Sports. Up next, I forgot to say, this was filmed at 6 p.m. So if Hallie does any crazy trades between now and then, this will record at 8 p.m. or be rebroadcasted at 8 p.m. Obviously, they won't be included. And up at 8:30, EOP Live. We'll see